Well, I'm delighted to be joined now by Mark Collins from the Commonwealth Foundation. Mark, thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
First of all, let's talk about the link between HIV/AIDS and sort of health rights for people in the Commonwealth.
Well, clearly HIV/AIDS is a global pandemic, so there is a massive health issue here. In Commonwealth countries, there's a particular challenge because we have, a quarter of the world's countries in the Commonwealth. We've got about a third of the world's human population, but we've got nearly two-thirds of the people suffering under the HIV and AIDS pandemic. So we have a disproportionate number of people living with HIV and AIDS in Commonwealth countries.
So given that all but 11 countries in the Commonwealth have laws banning homosexual sex, what are some of the implications of that in terms of accessing healthcare, for example?
Because there's such a big problem in the Commonwealth with HIV and AIDS, all our governments are deeply concerned about it, and they want to take measures to address it. Now, clearly they're all undertaking measures in terms of medical work and so on and so forth, and they all have targets to meet and this sort of thing, working under the UN and all the rest of it. But one of the issues that is particularly concerning is that a large number of our Commonwealth countries, I think 43 out of the 54, have legislation in place that is criminalising sexual minorities and in some cases criminalising HIV and AIDS sufferers. And some of those laws, although many of them are old-fashioned and out of date even, haven't been changed for a long time, some of them actually more recently have been strengthened. Clearly governments are doing this believing that this will have a positive effect in reducing HIV and AIDS. The problem is there seems to be growing evidence that it may actually have the opposite effect. We need such people to be treated, and criminalising them clearly is not going to help us to do that.
So what are the Commonwealth Foundation doing to address some of these issues?
Well, we're a very small organisation. The Commonwealth Foundation was set up in 1965 as an intergovernmental body of the Commonwealth. Our role is to support professional associations, strengthen civil society and build cultural awareness and cultural understanding across the Commonwealth. We don't go into countries and do things at that level. We're tiny, only 20 staff. What we can do, though, is to try and draw on experiences from across the Commonwealth to try to encourage a positive and reflective dialogue between countries to try and find the best way forward. And we're fortunate in that we have got a good example from the Commonwealth's biggest democracy, India, where sexual minorities have been decriminalised, and there's been a very positive outcome as a result. And that's something we want to give an opportunity to explain to all the other Commonwealth countries.
So let's talk about India. What can other countries perhaps learn from what India have been doing in terms of changing their legislation?
Well, first of all, I think the important thing is that the India experience has been, it seems to me, entirely positive. So gay people are now free to walk the streets like everybody else. There hasn't been some ghastly reaction to this from society. Nobody's fazed by it. In fact, one learns that these sorts of things have been really part of India's culture for thousands of years, and really we shouldn't be worrying so much about it. Also, the fact that people in India who may be at risk through their own personal practices, at risk of getting HIV and AIDS, or at higher risk, are able to seek advice, seek treatment in an open, free environment. That seems entirely good and protects not only them, but everybody else as well. So we want to get that message across to other countries. Now, of course, we're talking about 43 countries. That's a lot of countries. Now, it would be wrong to think that every country was the same. You know, every country in the Commonwealth has its own culture, its own beliefs, its own history, its own legacy, its own approaches to these things. Laws, I believe strongly, must come from people, but they shouldn't be drafted and imposed on people. They should come from people. They should emerge from what we believe in.
Well, I'll leave it there for now, but thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.